What's going on today? We're going to be talking about The Power. Welcome to Victims and Villains. My name is Captain Nostalgia. I am both a writer and podcaster here. If you guys are new to Victims and Villains, we are a non-profit and publication that creates content like the one you're watching right now, simply to educate and engage individuals like yourself on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. And today we are going to be talking about The Power. Before I go on, The Power is now out on DVD, video on demand, and digital, and is also a Shudder exclusive. So if you guys haven't tried Shudder or aren't subscribed to Shudder and you're like me, you love horror, please go check them out. We'll have links in the descriptions below on how you guys can join their service. So I'm going to preface this a lot when I'm speaking about this. This film is kind of set up like a biopic, but not quite a biopic. So I don't actually know if what I'm about to say is actually based on true stories or not, or it's just framed in that way throughout the narrative. The Power tells the story of Val, who is a nurse showing up for duty on her first day of work. And that whole biopic thing, this is where that comes into play. This takes place in London, 1974, during a series of blackouts where basically the city of London is, in order to, the way that they phrase it is basically just to save power at night. They have been, portions of the city are experiencing blackouts in an effort to save energy. Somehow on her first day, Val actually gets suckered into working the dark shift, as they refer to it in the film. And, well, in the words of Hellboy, when things go bump in the night, we are the things that bump back. This film definitely feels like Midsummer, Hereditary, The Witch, a lot of those really slow burn horror movies that we have been seeing a lot of recently. And unlike a lot of those other films that I've just mentioned, there are a lot of dull areas that seem to build with this film. There's a lot of unfortunate dead air that seems to take place within this film. Just mostly the narrative of like the first and second act don't feel as tight as they could be, but they're saved by the performances nonetheless. Rose Williams plays Val in this movie, our leading lady who we follow through the majority of the film. Honestly, if it wasn't for her performance, the areas of the film where the narrative feels like it really drags, this film would be almost unwatchable. She really elevates this through a performance of just not only vulnerability, but just transformative rarities that we kind of don't see as much within horror nowadays. While I can say that The Power might not be my favorite film of the year, I can definitely say that Williams as a performance in this movie definitely exceeds probably top 5 performances that I've seen from anybody in horror this year. She has an innocence and a charisma about her that is just really refreshing to find in a protagonist. And just how that innocence and charisma is kind of tainted as the film goes on. It just really draws you to the edge of your seat. And Williams really rises to the challenge for it. On top of that, talking about the pacing of this movie, like I said, this movie is really much a slow burn. The film has a lot of red herrings that it does really well. Even the poster for the film kind of feels like a red herring. I won't kind of talk about it because it's kind of one of those films that's much like Inception, where the ending of the film and kind of, in this case, the blackout scenes are kind of left to interpretation about whether or not it's really a supernatural entity or it's an allegory for something that's revealed in the third act. And that honestly is probably one of the reasons that this film is probably one of the smartest films to come out this year. It has a really strong energy about it and a really strong writing. Karina Faith, the writer director on this picture just does a tremendous job. Miss Faith creates a uh, script that, while at sometimes might not always be as tight as I would prefer it to be, really does present compelling characters and a story that is kind of terrifying to really face. The last act of this movie just completely had my jaw on the absolute ground. It's shocking how the events of the first two acts really kind of factor into the third act, and there's a point in the film where I thought the film had reached its end, and it just completely really surprised me and did a 180. The last act of this movie really redeems kind of the slower spots in the last two acts. If you guys are like me and you guys are a cinephile that likes to collect physical media, then this DVD release is absolutely one for you that I have to say pick it up. The special features aren't super in detail. You get a behind the scenes gallery photo image, and also you get a commentary from writer-director Karina Faith and star Rose Williams. As far as the film goes, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 3.5 on our Rorschach rating scale. It's a strong performance, strong scares, and just really the pacing sometimes, that's probably the downfall of where this film loses me a little bit. But as I've said, Karina Faith's script, her direction, and the use of shadows and lights in this really work well. And when they're brought to life by Rose Williams, this film just kind of takes on a life of its own. For this film's mental health moment, I'm going to actually be taking from just Rose Williams' character's Val's first day approach and kind of her relationship with some of the other nurses. There's a scene in particular where it's revealed that Val is working with an old school chum named Barbara, who goes by Babs now. And let's just be honest, Babs is kind of a bully. And no matter how long you have to be with a person in a place of employment, it's never worth your mental health. I know that some of us think that, yes, my job is awful, and yes, I have to pay bills, but there's so many more opportunities out there for you that are going to be better for your mental health and your value, your understanding of your self-worth and value. Sometimes we fail to take into consideration mental health when assessing whether or not a job is of meaning or true value and true worth. And I just want to encourage you right now that if you're in an employment that's toxic for your mental health, you're experiencing bullying, you're experiencing depression, a number of other things, please consider the resources below and seriously consider another job. I'm talking about this from my own personal experience. I recently have been at a new job for the past year and a half and during my day job and have never been at a place for better mental health. Prior to that, the last 2 years I was at my last job, it just felt like pure agony and pure misery, just because a lot of what was happening there, I took on my own mental health. And in turn, it really, really messed me up. So I just want to encourage you guys to understand your value and understand that your mental health isn't worth a job. So please consider the resources and consider maybe looking somewhere else or reevaluating your employment situation. If you guys have seen The Power, it's now streaming on Shudder, and it is now available on video on demand, digital, and DVD. So make sure that you guys click the links in the descriptions below and check it out. But make sure that you guys hit the subscribe button below, and have a great night.